Hey guys, welcome to book review number 90. Today I will be reviewing Tracks by Robyn Davidson. Okay, so basically the premise of this book is Robyn Davidson was a suburban Australian who decided to move into the vast emptiness of the Outback to take camels across the country over a 6-month stretch. The first part of this book is really dedicated to her purchasing the camels and the training and kind of the insane characters around Alice Springs that kind of got her on her way. The most infamous of which is a guy named Kurt, who she kind of interned under, or was an apprentice under for camel training, and he was completely crazy and somewhat violent, though not really against her, but just kind of very loud. But also one thing she mentioned in the book is because the Outback is such kind of a hard scrabble place to begin with, it tends to be, it kind of does attract the crazies. It attracts, because there's really very little industry. Most of the farming is like, stock cattle. So it's very hard to make a living out there as an individual, so you just tend to attract the crazies. So she also worked in a bar and talked about a lot of the misogyny, her obviously being a woman that is engaging in this. Her name's Robyn Davidson, that's engaging in this trip. A lot of misogyny. They said that she was poorly treated by all her employers, and actually her favorite non-camel related thing to do around Alice Springs was to be a contract window washer, just because she didn't really have a boss. It was just the contracts that she had. So if there was an asshole that she was contracted out to, she could just deal with them and quit working for them. But anyway, the majority of time is talked about training camels. The way that she describes camels early on in the book is vicious, nasty, dirty, prone to attacking their owners. Particularly the males that are in heat are very, very dangerous. I mean, camels weigh over 1,000 pounds a lot of times. So for the most part, they're docile or kiddish, I guess you could say. Like, they'll kind of play around a little bit. But when a male is in heat, it's very, very dangerous. Like, they will attack you and they will try to crush you by sitting on you. They'll, sometimes when they're playing around, they'll snap at you, but not really do any damage. But they'll snap at you and try to, sink their teeth into you, take a chunk of flesh out when a male is in heat. The second most dangerous circumstance is during training. Obviously, this makes sense for anyone that's had like horses. And that tends to be more just like bucking, or, a lot of it was just monotony of her camels would run away at random moments and just, she'd have to, she hobbled them at night so they couldn't get very far, but she didn't fence them in. I think it was primarily because of like feed, and also she just didn't have like the big enough fences, because you need like really, really big fences to fence in camels of like reinforced titanium. So what she would do is hobble the camels. This was also for practice when she got actually out into the desert, of bringing the camels' legs together so they can kind of move around, but not real fast. But over like the course of a nighttime, they can get pretty far away. So a good part of her morning was just tracking down the camels and where they had wandered to the night before. She had mentioned that she was a novice going in, but quickly was able to pick up a lot of the techniques. I think this is largely just due to circumstance. The larger wild, and I think I can support my thesis by what hypothetically Robyn might say, is very dangerous, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can really hurt yourself. But once you start picking stuff up, I think you can pick stuff up faster than what people in the cities might think you can. Like, you'll definitely be a novice starting out, and this isn't just with camels, it's any sort of like you know, outdoor living, if you will. But you can pick it up pretty quick once you kind of start learning. Like the initial process is slow, but then it kind of picks up very quickly. Well, anyway, she initially started with 3 camels. 3 camels. No, she started with 2 camels because this Kurt, who was the kind of crazy psychopath that trained her, as a gift for their training, gave her 2 camels. Now, one of the camels she actually had to put down because of an infection in their chest, and she gave the infected camel a lot of vaccine. It almost seemed like it was like a giant, syringe of vaccine. But it didn't work, and so she had to put the camel down, and she said it was really pretty horrific, and was not the first time she would have to put her camel down, though it was the only time she had to put her camel down for that reason. But the other camel was Zelly, who was an old female, but still very capable, kind of a plotter, if you will. The other 2 camels came when Kurt sold the farm, actually. Somebody new had bought it from the city, but didn't know what they were doing. Now, obviously, she didn't want to go out into the countryside with only 1 camel. So, because they didn't know what they were doing and kind of had these camels that were running wild all over the place, she was at this point able to use her knowledge that she had accumulated under Kurt, albeit under very stressful circumstances of Kurt, to kind of finagle her way of getting 2 younger camels. Now, the incident where I mentioned where the camel was very aggressive when in heat, the male camel, was the 2 camels were, no, I'm going to forget one now. It was Bub and, oh geez, who was the one that, well, the other camel that whose name I'm forgetting, was the one that was really dangerous. Bub was a little younger. He was still a little bit of an adolescent. What was that? Bub and, we're going to say Tom, even though it's not Tom, and I should have known this. But Tom got very aggressive and essentially attacked her, and she said she was freaked out of her mind. Luckily, she didn't have to put him down, which in the time period she thought she would. She was able to just get away, and I think they beat the living crap out of this animal, which you would think would be animal cruelty, but it's mentioned multiple times in the book. Really, a lot of times the only option you have is to beat the camel. So anyway, she sets out, sees a lot of tourists around Alice Springs, hates it, sees a lot of tourists around Uluru, which is close by Australian standards, not by any other standards on Earth. Sees a lot of tourists, hate it, people snap her photos, kind of the camel lady motif, which she hates. Just kind of the, cliched version of it, if you will, because she was a camel lady, but, starts to emerge, she hates that. It's also around this time period that National Geographic picks her up. She was running short on funds. I mean, she was not bankrolled for this trip at all. She essentially kind of went by the seat of her pants, but to kind of resupply her, all that kind of stuff. National Geographic eventually hires her, and there's this guy, Rick. I think it's Rick. Tom, Rick. No, it's Eddie. No, it's not Eddie. Okay, we're gonna say Rick. Even though this is a different Rick. Okay, well, screw it. We're gonna call him Bill. These are totally wrong names. Anyway, Bill is the photographer, and a large part of the complaint she has throughout the rest of the book is, we're just going to call him the photographer. The photographer, the invasion of space. And even though the photographer isn't with her all the time, she feels like her goal was initially to be completely away from civilization and kind of know what it's like to be out on your own. And even though National Geographic didn't want someone to be with her all the time, only want to take, at relative points throughout the journey, take pictures, there was a certain time frame she had to meet to be in certain places. She just had certain responsibilities there, and she really hated it. Now, I mentioned Eddie, whose name I do remember, was one of the Aborigines that traveled with her over land. And she really kind of contrasted kind of the misogyny of Aborigines, almost I think a little too much, or not of Aborigines, but the misogyny of white Australians and kind of the hatred, the racism, just the bigotry of white Australians versus kind of the natural man state, if you will, or natural woman state of Aborigines. And I definitely say that that's true. I don't think that can be, we're not calling them 50-50, but she did kind of deify Aborigines a little bit, and just kind of all white Australians were bad. Now, part of this is she was out in the bush so long that she went a little nutzos. Little nutzos out in the bush, so it was almost like any white person was suddenly like, that. Now, the later part of her book really gets into the craziness of traveling over a desert. It's a really crazy idea. And it's actually not like super hard in terms of logistics, although it is effort worthy. One of the things she mentioned in the book is it was very hard, but not impossible. Like, it's something that not I wouldn't say anyone can do, but anyone that's of relative youth that has 2 cents about them could do. But what really was the hardest was actually the psychological aspect of being alone, being in the desert, kind of something that was both freeing and a little bit terrifying was the stripping of layers of kind of the niceties of society, if you will. She mentioned, like, later when she was traveling through the desert, after the first couple weeks, she really, unless the photographer was along or she saw someone coming down like a dirt track, she mostly traveled along like dirt tracks in the Outback. So she would rarely see people. I mean, rarely see people. Well, she mostly just traveled naked. And just, that's not a necessary part of society that I need, and these clothes are just making me hotter than I already am. It's like 95 degrees, 105 degrees, 35 degrees Celsius. Out here, it's not something that really is necessary. Deifies. Also, a large part of the book that this is my one maybe criticism. I thought it is a very good book. The one criticism I would have would be it's very didactic. Like, it's very like everything is extreme, and even though like she didn't really say like her situation was extreme, like her descriptives were all very strong descriptives, very sort of like, this is like like an angel or something, or like a devil, or the sun beat down, and well, anyway, okay, the book kind of ends in 2 spots. One is, and one that I forgot to kind of build up over the course of the time, is when she was back in Alice Springs on Kurt's ranch. She acquired, I guess, this dog named Diggity. Now, also the 4th camel. I mentioned 3 camels. Bub, still missing it. Bub, Zelly, and the other one that was like went real crazy. Zelly actually had a baby camel shortly before leaving. So the 4th camel was Goliath. Now, that was the 4 main traveling companions. There was Robyn, who was the only human. But she said that for morality's sake, she took a dog named Diggity. And the dog was just a companion, friend, everything you would want a dog to be on such an insane journey. You almost want a dog more than a human, just because how loyal they are and how little, obviously, you don't get into fights or anything. Or unless you're half crazed, and then you might get in a fight like she did. But for the most part, it's not like a human fight. Not like you can't verbally interact. So very, very important to her emotionally. And she mentioned at the towards the end of the book that the Australian government, or whatever, park service, whatever you want to call it, ecological commission, they're having a dingo problem, which are like wild, like savage dogs that live out in the environment. So they drop actually poisoned meat at various points. And Diggity, unfortunately, in one of the territories she was going in towards when she was getting close to the coast, close to the Indian Ocean, excuse me, actually ate the meat and died. And it's like Old Yeller. It's like a dog dying story. It is so sad. Anyway, I guess I don't want to breeze over that, but don't want to mention too much about it. It was really sad. She makes it to the coast, makes it to a stud farm for camels, or, just like a general station is what they call them. They don't call them ranches really in Australia. They call them stations, but they're essentially the same thing. She made it to a station on the west coast near the Indian Ocean, gave up her camels after walking about 3 or 4 days along the beach, kind of, the idyllic sunset of the crashing waves of the Indian Ocean. It's on the west coast, so the sun is setting. And that was kind of the end of her trip. And then she said she actually mentioned pretty soon she would be back in New York City, writing or talking to the general media. That was it. So anyway, this book review has gone on about as long as I want to. In general, check it out. It's a good book. It's really kind of one of the, I think, the forebears, because this book was written in like 78 or something, to like the modern kind of adventure nonfiction book, where someone goes out into nature and says what it's like. It's a really good book. I thought I'd maybe be a little bit disappointed by, well, I should say Australian writers aren't the best, but it's really kind of, as much as sometimes it can be a little didactic in terms of strong language, it really does cover the full range of human emotions, particularly the full range of human emotions in being such a stark area or stark circumstance. So anyway, check it out, you guys. I'll do more of these later. Bye.